To be critical about something is to be very detailed and concentrated when you're reviewing a piece of art or science or something of that nature, something that has been created and put out there to be seen and therefore subsequently judged by other people, right? Now, what being critical did for artists and scientists and people alike who created things and put it out there for the world is to have feedback, understand what they may have done right or wrong, and be able to be better in the near future with their future ventures. It was constructive criticism and it wasn't meant to be harmful in any way. It was just, it was more so like peer reviewing or having different perspectives that could open your mind to the absolute best creation that you can do, because you're hearing other people's opinions that you may not have thought about because maybe your mind wasn't open to it. Nowadays, if you're being critical about something, you're either seen as a hater or you're just doing too much, especially on the internet. You can't be critical about anything anymore. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, you on my dick, bro, you on my, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna be one of those people who are like, oh, the internet got so soft, the internet this or that. I don't think that's really the problem here. I just think it's more so people have grown very numb to criticism due to toxic positivity and people not wanting to, hurt their friends or stuff like that, or people not wanting to be seen as a hater on the internet. But if it takes you being a hater to be a critic, then be a hater for real. My name is Dolce Jeans, and I'm going to be talking about the death of criticism in art today, specifically fashion though. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It would really help out. I really appreciate it. And it only takes like 1 second, right? Without further ado though, let's get into the video. So like I just explained briefly in the intro, criticism used to be a very, very important and integral part of all art back in the past, like decades ago, right? And it used to be very important and even appreciated by artists because that's what helps you grow and move forward and progress. Criticism could either come from like news outlets or magazines or just like media companies that care about the art form that you're handling, right? It could also come in private from like maybe your mentor or a group of friends that you showed your work. Just, a small amount of people that you show that you trust to hear their opinions on it. Criticism could come from anywhere. But the way how criticism was, even if it was like a friend of yours or somebody you didn't know or some like a peer in your art field, it would usually be sensible or valid because it wouldn't just be talking to talk. It would actually, because people would take more time to understand what you're doing back then, why you're doing it, the elements of everything, and there would be more people who cared. So the criticism would actually be more from a place of actual genuine care and wanting to help you do better or help you understand what you didn't do right or wrong. Nowadays, criticism is only a vehicle used to just spread like very like trolly, baity. Well, not all the time, but usually it's like really trolly or baity, or people use like harsh, extremely exaggerated harsh criticism to kind of like make controversy to kind of boost themselves as like this cynical person. Like think Simon Cowell from American Idol, and all he did was just be harsh. Like that was his thing. Like there's a lot of people like that on the internet, especially on Twitter. And the thing is, if the criticism is like very minimal or like it's okay, it's bad, or if it's like, oh, this is the worst thing ever, you're trash, stop making music, stop making clothes, stop drawing, you'll never be anything. Very harsh, like extremely harsh and extremely minimal criticism are both on the same like coin. It's two sides of the same coin, and that is that criticism like that is usually it's not very critical. Actually, it's just very cynical just to be cynical. It's not supposed to be listened to. No matter what you do, it can't be that bad to solicit that type of response, like at all. I promise you, whatever you're making isn't that bad to have somebody be like, oh, this is trash, bro, sell your microphone, sell your sewing machine. Like people just like to be cynical on the internet because that's what gets views, and we all know that though. One of the main ways that criticism is dying is because people actually don't know how to take good criticism nowadays, and this is like, it relates to the hater pandemic, what I like to call it. That's what we're about to talk about. Now, calling somebody a hater because they may have criticism for your work that maybe isn't the nicest or maybe isn't presented in the nicest way is such a reductive defense mechanism, and it shouldn't be your first resort, but it's a lot of artists' first resort to be like, oh, you're just a hater, or bro, you probably just don't like me or something. I promise you, the world is not out to get you. These people probably have valid things to say, but maybe they're not presenting it in a way that you can handle, or maybe they're just not presenting it in a thought out way in general. But there's no reason for me to see you for the first time on TikTok and hear your music and be like, oh, this is so mid, this is so trash. Like people like that, you shouldn't pay attention to them because they have misery in their spirits and they need to word that out. Criticism that isn't very critical and it's negative, that usually can be like quantified as hate. But if it's like very real criticism that isn't really cutting you any slack and it's just telling you how it is, that's not hate either. That's just like deadpan criticism. That's just like no nonsense. It may be harsh to take, but you should still listen to it. There are lots of people nowadays who just can't take criticism, and it's like one thing I hate. Oh my god, I'm so glad I remember this. It will be like a designer and you tell them that their clothes are this or that, and it's like, bro, they'll like hype up their brand saying they have such a story for their brand and it's telling a story and this and that, and then the clothes won't execute anything about that story or have any implication of a story being told at all. And you can bring that up and they'll hit you with the it's just clothes. You don't understand how mad that gets me when they say it's just clothes. Like, it's not just if it was just clothes, then stop making stop trying to hype up your clothing brand to be something that is not. You're just a clothing brand if it's just clothes, you know what I mean? Like, that defense mechanism is so backwards, and that's what's stopping the whole industry of, well, not, let's not say the whole industry of clothes, but like art in general. It's stopping art in general from progressing, because the minute somebody hits hard criticism, they immediately fall back and be like, oh, it's not even that serious, bro, it's not even that deep. Stop trying to make your brand seem that deep. Stop giving your brand this story and this backstory, and just name it a brand and just make the clothes so that we can all understand that the clothes aren't that deep. Be like minimal. I just make trash copies of other brands. Don't try and build up your brand to be this cool special story thing that people should follow if it's gonna end up being just clothes if you're not that good yet. Please. Now, as an amateur, people should, sometimes cut you some slack, because everybody starts from somewhere and not everybody's gonna be good off the jump. Like, that's a very rare thing. Like, you're not Alexander McQueen, okay? But before you get mad at somebody for criticizing you and saying, oh, it's not that deep, it's just music, it's just clothes, just take a second to really think about it and see if what they're saying makes sense. If it does, then take heed. And if it doesn't, then just move on, because criticism based on nothing but just, trying to have an opinion for an opinion's sake shouldn't be listened to. That's not criticism, that's something else. It's usually actual hate. So it's a skill that you have to develop and learn how to harness in terms of what you should and shouldn't pay attention to. Don't be reductive. Don't just back away from it just because somebody's hitting you with something that maybe you can't handle. Like, I know Eddie Salman, the guy who did a lot of the Dior and YSL clothes in like the 2000s and 2010s respectively. He was known for like the skinny rocker look. I know there was this one journalist who talked bad about his clothes, I think when he was at YSL, and he literally banned her from coming to his shows and all types of stuff. Like, don't be like that. You're salty. That's so. Another thing that modern day artists have to understand is that if you think people are haters now, there were real haters back in the 80s and 90s in the art field, bro. Like, those people were a lot more ruthless. Now, the designer John Galliano, very famous for his work at Dior, right? In spring summer 1986, he created a collection called Fallen Angels. This was when he was still very, very young in fashion, and most of his friends were helping him out creating collections. So he was still rough around the edges as an amateur, right? His collection was good, but a lot of people said it was just direct copies of Vivienne Westwood, and they weren't having it at all. Like, they weren't having it at all. They were not letting him up. And he was like, no, it's not. It's not a copy. And he was crying for days. This is like according to his friends, but they were like, bro, it's true. It was a direct copy. You need to find your own voice. And it hurt him bad, but that's good criticism, because if it's a direct copy, that should be called out. And the journalists of fashion and the writers for the magazines, they were the ones who would communicate and break down the shows for, like, the common folk who just wanted to read about the show to understand. They were the ones who held a lot of power in dictating the narrative of whether the show was good or not. They were the ones who were calling out, like, oh, this is a Vivienne Westwood copy. One of the writers who specifically did it was a man named Bill Cunningham for, I think, a magazine called Details. It was a direct copy. I'm saying, like, they weren't having it at all. They weren't mincing any words. Maybe it was because he was an amateur, maybe it was because of the time period, but I just know they weren't having it at all. And people think they have it hard now. Like, no, it was much more cutthroat back then. A lot of other Galliano criticism back then was that his clothes were just way too imaginative and romantic to be worn, and they were actually physically hard to wear too. And that was a criticism that would follow him for all of his time throughout Dior. Like, the clothes were so fantastic and magical. Like, one runway was like about a Russian princess running away from a castle. Another runway was about like Indians hopping off of a train into, like, I think it was like a Paris or a London train station. There's a whole bunch of madness, and the clothes really reflected these narratives. And it's like, even if you look at the runways of his actual John Galliano brand, they were always so conceptual to the point where it's like, who's the market for this stuff? You know what I mean? And that was a legit criticism that would follow him around a lot. I think, especially when he was at Dior, if you look at the Dior clientele, it's a bunch of like really mature ladies who just want to look really good, but they don't want to look like Russian princesses. And that was a legit criticism because of where he was and the context at the time. And that's something that he never really paid that much attention to, so it kind of bit him in the end. But it was good criticism. That's an example of good criticism. No nonsense, just straight facts. An example of bad criticism, of course, is the opposite side of John Galliano, Alexander McQueen. Alexander McQueen is one of the most misinterpreted designers of all time. Like, so many times journalists saw his collections and just got it completely wrong. Autumn Winter 1995 Highland Grape. The goal of this show from Alexander McQueen was to basically show the real side of how England took so much of Scotland. They raided the lands, they pillaged women, did horrible things to women, and they just destroyed Scotland. His problem was that people like Vivienne Westwood were sending things like the tartan fabric, which is native to Scotland, on the runway, and kind of like romanticizing this thing like, oh, we're British, but we're doing Scottish things, and like Scottish elements that were stolen by England were romanticized. Alexander McQueen, having Scottish lineage, didn't like that at all, and he wanted to show the real raw real reality of the situation in like a provocative and kind of like an unavoidable way by sending these real raw realities down on the runway. So women would be down on the runway with torn up clothes, staggering, dazed look on their faces, bloodied up, and just in horrible states that were caused by men. And this was to be real and show that, hey, this England stuff that they keep pushing is no fairy tale. This is what it was really like. And a lot of the press misinterpreted it as like misogynist, um let's say Mexist. I don't know what words I can and can't say on YouTube, so I'm trying to like switch the words out. An insult to women, a sick joke, like almost like a fetish thing. And McQueen was like, no, like I keep on getting misinterpreted in the press. I was trying to show y'all this is what really was, you feel me? And some journalists did understand, but most didn't. But that's a clear example of bad criticism. If you want more examples of bad criticism, you can just look through so many of Alexander McQueen's runways and how they were received. You're gonna see some really bad opinions, right? He was just too good for. Yeah. More modern day examples of bad criticism are like Vogue runway reviews. It would be like a horrible show from a really high fashion brand, but because maybe a journalist is like supposedly on their payroll, or the journalist has like a really good relationship with the brand, they'll talk about everything except for how bad the clothes were. Like the set today was based off of Spain because the designer was living in Spain to get inspiration for the collection, and then the designer, like there's an excerpt from a conversation between the journalist and the designer about how, oh, Spain was always close to me as a kid, this and that. And he picked the models. Like they'll talk about the set, the models, the time period, the sales of the brand, everything except for if the clothes were good or bad. And you can tell when these journalists are tiptoeing around what's really at hand, which is the clothes. A runway review should be about, yes, the set and the clothes mainly. If you're talking about everything but the clothes, that's not criticism, that's not a review. That's just like that's like fanfare for the designer. Yeah, that's bad criticism in the modern day and age. Moving on to a really big problem in art in general nowadays is toxic positivity. Now, if you don't know what toxic positivity is, basically like giving these people the notion that they can never do wrong, or that even if their clothes are bad, they shouldn't go back to the drawing board. It's like, oh, especially if these people are like your friends, and it's like, you have that one friend who's trying to like rap or make clothes or something, and he's trash, but like you don't want to tell him because that's your friend. No, be real with your friend. Tell him to put the sewing machine down or get out the studio and go learn how to ride a forklift or something. We need like more electricians and like marine biologists. Yeah, toxic positivity is just being a yes man almost, but kind of just keep on encouraging somebody without actually telling them where they could get better. Just being like, oh, keep going, man, keep going. It's basically like the opposite side of being a hater, like deriding. Because showing somebody their flaws and when they went wrong is like the only way they can improve, right? If they don't see it and you're not gonna show them, how are they gonna see where they could improve or where they went wrong? With toxic positivity, they get none of that. They just get straight A's. Like, oh, you're so good, you're so this and that. Now, it would be crazy if somebody was flawless off rip. I can't lie. It would be kind of crazy, wouldn't it? There's always room to improve. I'm not saying to nitpick somebody's work, but don't be like constantly never endingly gassing them up, because that's doing a lot more harm than good. A lot of toxic positivity also is fear of being alienated because of having a different opinion. Like if everybody thinks that what this person is doing is fire and you're the one person who's like, I'm not sure, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to like come out and say that, because you maybe don't want to be the only person with a wrong different opinion or a wrong perspective, because then you get seen as a hater, right? So fear of alienation is definitely a real thing with giving opinions on the internet. I know for a fact, even today, like there's people who get cooked on my Twitter timeline for saying something that I agree with, and I just gotta shh. You gotta sit back and stay silent, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not encouraging to just have a different opinion for the sake of it, but if you feel like, it's always a discussion to be had. You can have a different opinion and somebody could show you how you're wrong, and it could go very well without anybody being cussed out, you know what I mean? But nowadays, people don't know how to have real conversations. You could bring up your different opinion, and somebody could show you how your opinion isn't valid, and that could be perfectly fine too. But toxic positivity just isn't the way. If you have a different opinion, just bring it up and hope and pray that the creator of the art can have a real, sensible, logical conversation with you. But yeah, bring back telling people when their stuff are trash. I don't care if that's your brother, your girlfriend, I don't care. Wrapping up this video, I just wanted to give like a general synopsis about what I think about critical thinking in art. Nowadays, it's so easy to run with somebody's opinion on the internet that, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is amazing, this is trash, without thinking for yourself what you think. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong in the eyes of everybody else. It's about what you hold close to yourself and what you like and what you don't like. Don't shape your opinions based off of thinking, will everybody else agree or disagree? Because that's not critical thinking, that's pandering. Real true art cannot survive without being critically observed and reviewed and understood. Everybody likes to enjoy art as well, but when you have all enjoyment and no critical thinking, it becomes bad because there has to be a balance between both. One cannot exist without the other. All enjoyment for like frivolous things or colorful things or things that are really cool and random leads to no art that has deeper meaning. I'm not saying that all art has to be super deep, but there's something for everybody. If you take the real, genuine, deep meaning out of art, then there's a lot of people that are going to suffer because a lot of people care about art with stories behind it. You don't want to alienate those people at all. If art continues to be unchecked and not critically thought about and just purely face value, oh, this is so cool to look at, then all art will become shallow. Shallow art is mediocre art. In every single industry, you think about the good and the bad. There has to be high quality and low quality. There has to be deeper meanings and things that people don't want to think about. In art, like fashion, dancing, music, whatever it is, bro, it's all connected and it's all a balance. You have to have a balance of all these things because there's something for everybody. Some people don't even want to buy clothes unless there's a deeper meaning behind it. And there's people who want to thrift clothes just because it has a funny graphic on the front. We're all different types of people and we all require different things to satisfy our emotions, right? Too much work makes Jack a dull boy, too much fun makes him a dull toy or whatever. You know what I mean? Right now we are some toys, bro. Like there's a lot of art out there that actually requires some deeper understanding to be fully enjoyed. Now I'm not trying to be like those people who were like, oh, Rick and Morty, you have to have a high IQ to fully understand Rick and Morty. Like, you remember when people were doing that? That was so ridiculous. I'm not saying that all art should be like that because I keep on saying it's a balance, but we're losing the real critical side of things with this new modern day generation of artists. Before you attack me in the comments like, oh, you trying to do something, I kinda am, but I'm not trying to say that I'm better than anybody else, so don't attack me. But really what it is in the world of art in all industries is the people who have really deep meanings and really, really thought out things to say that usually set the tone for the more popular stuff. It's like in clothes how a lot of these fast fashion brands like Zara and H&M copy the designers who actually think of very new and innovative techniques in making clothes and stuff like that. Those are the people who usually have something more to say with deeper understandings of art and deeper messaging. And then it gets turned out and imitated and reproduced for the world to enjoy and consume. But if we don't have any creatives left that's really getting criticized, and we don't have any people who can give this criticism to push people to the brink of high quality art, then everything's just going to become mediocre and even the copycats won't have anybody to copy, and then whatever industry you're observing will eventually crash and burn. The bubble will pop, and that's not what we need for any type of art. So I'm saying it's not that I'm telling you to take everything seriously nowadays, but we need to bring back critical thinking in art. Of course it's not dead, nobody's saying it's dead, but it's definitely losing its place nowadays when attention spans are getting lower. The more frivolous, foolish things are being pushed forward to the forefront. Artists aren't getting time to develop. Like music artists, they're not getting time to develop as much. The quality of art is going down because of how fast-paced everything is. And I feel like there's a real urgent need for real care and attention in art when observing and when creating. And I feel like I've been yapping for the same thing for like the past 5 minutes, so let me stop. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Dolce Jeans. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Please leave some comments about what you think of the video. I'd love to discuss it with you. I'd love for you to criticize my work as well. That's all I had to say. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.